Good morning and welcome to the Maryland Public Service Commission. The commission will come to order and we are on the record. This is the third day of our hearing in public conference number 53 regarding the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on Maryland's utility operations and the impacts on customer experiences. During the first 2 days of the hearing, the commission heard from live testimony by the utilities, both electric and natural gas, the commission's own staff, the state's ratepayer advocate, the Maryland Energy Efficiency Advocates, and other interested parties and stakeholders. The depth of that testimony over the course of 2 days, combined with the data responses provided by the utilities, led me to the decision that the commission needed additional time to consider the record developed thus far, thereby requiring this third unplanned day. It is not lost on the commission that the governor's utility moratorium will expire in less than 24 hours. And as the agency of competent jurisdiction, we have the responsibility of ensuring a smooth and orderly transition going forward. I believe that the immediate lifting of the moratorium at midnight tonight would not accomplish that outcome. As commissioners of the PSC, it is our fundamental responsibility to balance competing interests in furthering the public interest. Many of the compelling arguments were made both in written and oral testimony as we attempt to evaluate and determine a reasonable path forward during the midst of a pandemic that has affected all of our lives so greatly, most notably on those least fortunate to bear that burden. The magnitude of the problem we are facing, which was acknowledged by all the parties over the past 2 days, is immense. During the moratorium period, unpaid past due balances owed by utility customers have increased into the hundreds of millions. And we've heard that that amount could very well double by the conclusion of this year. We should make no mistake, this situation is akin to a runaway train. These past due balances are increasing by the millions every month. This presents a clear and unmitigated mounting crisis where some customers will never be able to pay their balances realistically. The commission must undertake the nearly impossible task of balancing the needs of utility customers who rely on these essential services with the need of the utilities to maintain a stable revenue stream in order to provide safe and reliable service at just and reasonable rates. During this hearing, we heard from one utility that is currently experiencing cash flow problems resulting from non-payments. However, we must also protect the health of our utility customers, especially now with so many people working from home, attending school from home, and needing the electric and natural gas to power their daily needs. In a moment, I will propose to my colleagues a measured and thoughtful package of solutions as an initial first step to begin addressing the crisis we are facing. Compassion, understanding, and flexibility are key to making it through these extraordinarily difficult times. Last week, over the course of both days, I asked the utilities for their promise and their commitment that they will work with their customers who have fallen behind on their utility bills, and that they would continue to provide service to those customers so long as those customers were communicating with them and working with them in good faith. I received that commitment explicitly from a number of the utilities, and no utility stated a position to the contrary. Today, I remind all of Maryland's utilities not to break that commitment. However, also during the hearing, and this was on Thursday, I recall one utility citing the ideal number of disconnections that it could accomplish in a given week. I recognize that was a poor choice of words, but let me be clear. The concept that people who are behind on their bills are simply as metrics to determine the number of service terminations is unacceptable. We must do better, and we will do better. In contrast, on a positive note, we heard about the best practices employed by some utilities regarding how they are reaching out to customers to explain the available options. Washington Gas, for example, explained the high success rate of communicating with its customers using outbound calls. Additionally, this past Saturday, Washington Gas sent an email to all of its customers in Maryland explaining how it's packaging both existing and new programs for its customers. They've also committed to adopting a personal touch, those are their words, in their proactive outreach. That's exactly what we want, and that's exactly what we need from our utilities at this time. And for any utility who has not yet begun any outreach with its customers, you are directed to do so beginning today. The looming problem, however, remains, and we cannot avoid this, nor can we avoid our responsibility by allowing arrearages to grow out of control any further. We must take immediate action to begin to address the harm and the cost that is accruing to all Marylanders at this very moment. Fortunately, financial assistance to pay utility bills is available. We heard testimony from the director of the Office of Home Energy Programs, which is an office within the Department of Human Services, that there is money available. Director Bill Freeman, in fact, stated that there was $20 million left over from the last fiscal year and over $150 million currently available now. Likewise, Baltimore Gas and Electric testified that the Maryland Fuel Fund has available funds, but customer interests have been low. It is somewhat ironic that there are so many funds available and so much aid which currently sits unclaimed. Notwithstanding the fact that we're in a period of extreme need, this is likely a result and an unintended result of extending the moratorium. While the Commission will hold utilities responsible for proactive outreach to their customers to let them know about resources that are available to assist, it is critically important that customers behind on their utility bills not wait for a turn-off notice in the mail. They should contact their utility right away and work with them to discuss payment plans and bill assistance programs that are available to help them. The money is out there for the asking. Recovery from this pandemic will not be easy. However, we, as the state utility regulator, have the responsibility to address this crisis. Recognizing that there is no perfect solution, I am prepared to offer a package of initial measures that will serve as a framework for responding to the many concerns that we've heard over the past few days. Let me just emphasize again, these are initial measures. They are our first step. Further actions by this commission are forthcoming, and we will adjust accordingly should the direction or nature of this pandemic change. As a high-level summary, I will be proposing 5 motions as a package. The first one I propose is that the Commission extend the existing moratorium for residential customers for 1 additional month, during which our utilities would refrain from any collection activities, the assessment of late fees, and the termination of utility service. Further, any termination notices issued prior to October 1st, 2020 will be deemed invalid. Second, I will propose that for any residential termination where notice is required, the utility must provide the customer with such notice no less than 45 days prior to the date on which service termination may occur. Third, I will propose that our utilities must offer any residential customer in arrears with the option of a 12-month repayment plan, and low-income customers with the option of a 24-month repayment plan. Fourth, I will propose that our utilities be prohibited from collecting or requiring down payments or security deposits from any residential customer as a condition for beginning a payment plan. Finally, I will propose that the Commission prohibit a utility from refusing to negotiate or denying a payment plan to any residential customer because that customer failed to meet the terms of a previous payment plan during the past 18 months. Solutions for a problem of this magnitude do not come easy. but it is our responsibility to make these tough decisions. I believe that the comprehensive and balanced package of proposals serves the public interest and is a necessary first step towards addressing this very severe and growing crisis. By working together, by staying flexible, by showing compassion and empathy, we will keep essential utility services available for Marylanders during this very difficult and very sad time in our nation's history. With that, I yield to my colleagues for opening statements. I recognize Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to also again thank all that have taken place, all the folks who have taken place to participate in this conference. Since you essentially just heard the decision has largely been made, I'll try not to delay the inevitable by talking too long here. As I said at the beginning of these hearings, I found that the OPC proposal to be the most sound, moderate, and most fitting and compassionate, given these truly unprecedented health crisis. Listening to all the testimony over 2 days, it has reaffirmed my belief that as long as we remain under the pandemic state of emergency, this is no time to resume business as usual and to throw Marylanders to the mercy of monopoly utilities and their power to disconnect while these customers struggle to make ends meet and maintain essential services like utilities. While I certainly support any extension of the moratorium and a transition period, I am in the awkward position of having to choose between the plan that the Commission is putting before us today, which I find woefully inadequate, over the OPC plan, which is supported by the Attorney General, by over 60 of our Maryland state legislators, and by a number of low-income and groups and organizations. All of these entities have found that this proposal, the OPC proposal, recognizes that the crisis is far from over, and it's just not time to begin subjecting Marylanders to utility disconnections. I fear that what we're about to do here today will make the crisis for so many Marylanders even worse than it is now. I hear the argument that we need to get customers engaged with their utilities, and I agree it is important for customers to pay if they can pay. And yes, customers in arrears or who cannot pay their utility bills should be talking to the utilities about their circumstances, and I encourage all of them to do so. However, I believe that what we're doing today puts too much power in the hands of the utilities and hastily restores utilities' biggest threat to their customers, to take away their service. I believe what the Office of People Counsel is proposing provides the necessary protections to Marylanders and puts the responsibility on the utilities to effectively communicate with their customers and find ways to reach out and reassure them, and not under the threat of termination in the midst of this state of emergency. I note some of the successes, as mentioned by the chairman, of Washington Gas and Light, and believe if properly motivated, utilities could devise strategies and share best practices. We learned over the course of the hearings that when the governor makes pronouncements, that prompts action. And utilities have committed to work on a statewide public service announcement. I'd love to see that actually in place. So at a minimum, I would have liked to have given this some time to work, these efforts some time to work before allowing utilities resort to their greatest power, the threat of termination. More time would give utilities the chance to better prepare and train their customer care representatives to appropriately work with customers that have been impacted by government actions to shut down commerce across our state and who are seeking assistance or accommodations from utilities, many of them for the very first time. Marylanders will urgently need public assistance, and I would like to be assured that Maryland state agencies, such as OHEP, as the chairman mentioned, are prepared to handle the wave of citizens who may be seeking information and submitting applications again for the very first time. And while utilities claim that they don't want to disconnect customers and say they are open to work with customers to maintain their services, in the same breath, utilities have indicated they are already contemplating an eye-popping number of disconnections that only seems to be constrained by metrics and their ideal capability to carry them out. I just fear that this mentality is going to put many Marylanders at risk. So needless to say, this worries me and many others we have heard from during this conference. And again, it does not have to be this way. Maintain the moratorium until there are signs that the crisis has abated, or there are enhanced efforts in place to communicate and to work with customers, and not before putting in place adequate protections that give consumers a stronger position to negotiate maintaining their essential utility services. Again, if all of this should be in place before we consider lifting the moratorium. Now, I suggested language to my colleagues that would have memorialized all the wonderful utility commitments to not subject any customers who are in contact with the utility. They would not subject them to disconnection. By commission authority, prohibit it and make sure it's memorialized, and that we would reject any efforts by utilities to disconnect should they attempt to use that disconnection authority. Now, it was suggested to me by colleagues that this could be accomplished by dicta from the bench or a strong talking to. So again, as I said, I would prefer something with real protections and teeth, but I do join my colleagues in warning the utilities about the personal disasters, the societal turmoil that will be unleashed if they proceed with large-scale disconnections. And in this era of rapid communications, we will hear the stories, which will be widely disseminated, detailed and wrenching, of customers subjected to disconnections, or even utility indifference and incompetence. So please be aware and act prudently for all of our sake. Now, I have more concerns I'd like to express. Let me just finish by encouraging everyone to show respect and compassion for Marylanders so harshly impacted by this crisis that really comes at no fault of their own. I thought Jim Gravat's admonition, he represents energy advocates, his advice that those of us who are here that are comfortable, employed, and really have only been impacted to the extent that we have had to search for toilet paper or our favorite restaurants have closed, that we need to better understand and commit to helping those who are now in need of our aid. Let's stop making demeaning characterizations about their motivations or pop psychology diagnoses about human nature or procrastination. These are Marylanders in need, and we need to do our jobs. Now, at this point, since I'm in the minority today, I'm also somewhat of a bystander to what is about to happen. So I have taken some cues from precedent by Commissioners Williams and Brenner in a 2009 case involving the setting of customer protection standards during the economic crisis of that era. They both opted to dissent, stating that while they support much of what was in the majority plan, they found it to be totally inadequate and that the commission could do better. So as I'm hearing today, assuming all the motions are under one vote, I will not have any option other than to vote no, because I think we could have done much better. I will be making a request to the chairman that we separate the motions, because I would very much like to support motions 2 through 5. I think that those do contain important protections that I would like to support extending to Marylanders. And so I will verbally support them, but I may not have that opportunity to do so in the motion. And I will also seek to offer an amendment to motion number 1, and I will see if I'm recognized at that point. It'll essentially say that we will not set a date of October 1st. It will be subject to further action by the commission. So with that, I thank everyone again for participating in this proceeding, and I will defer now to my colleagues.
Point of order for all commissioners. All commissioners should not prejudge or pre-state the voting of an additional commissioner before that commissioner has an opportunity to provide their vote. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do not have a statement to read. I'm going to speak from my heart on these matters. And I think that's important. To me, as a person who was in the political realm for over 2 decades, these are not political matters per se. These are matters that will affect people's lives and the commerce of this state for generations to come. These are matters that are tremendously important and that I take very, very seriously. These are not matters to make populist issues of. These are matters to make sober decisions upon. And so we could try to make ourselves popular, but we shouldn't do that. We should do the right thing as we can discern it. And there are no easy answers here, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to associate myself with your comments. I thought they were very well thought out, very appreciated. These have been difficult times. This shutdown of our economy due to this pandemic is unprecedented in any of our lifetimes. It's the equivalent of the ship that I served upon in the United States Navy being full speed ahead and having the bridge order the engineering spaces to come to a back emergency. That is to say, all full stop and reverse direction. Put it in reverse immediately to avoid a collision from something ahead of you, back emergency. That's what this economy has done. And when a ship of that size and magnitude, like an economy of our size and magnitude, is given an order for a back emergency, it is not a pretty piece of machinery. It shudders and it shakes and it bucks and it hucks, and it is terrifying. And that is the equivalent of what we've seen in this economy and this economic shutdown. It has been terrifying to me. And we're at back emergency. We have been for a while, but now it's time. I think we've maybe, nobody's sure, avoided the immediate collision of our ship of state, but now it's time to start progressing again, start moving forward. And that's where we find ourselves in this state, in this economy, in this pandemic, in these utilities, and the services they provide to the citizens of the state of Maryland. We're starting to move forward again. I believe to allow the moratorium to expire tomorrow would have been the equivalent of jumping off a cliff. The cliff would have been fatal. The fall would have been fatal. We're not doing that. And if you recall, Mr. Chairman, I spoke at the beginning about things in balance and about trying to find a glide slope. I think we're finding that glide slope. We're not going to fall off a cliff. We're going to do a 30-day pause to allow people to collect their thoughts on this. It's very measured, and followed by a 45-day period. And oh, by the way, that 45-day period, should the motion prevail, will provide for adequate time for people to go through the Office of Home Energy Programs, OHEP, their process for getting assistance to people. And we know that there are many tens of millions of dollars of assistance available to people, as there are in the Fuel Fund of Maryland. So we have thought this out. It is a glide slope. It's not a drop off the cliff. Some folks, I think, would just like to extend the moratorium forever until such a time that we'll fall off the cliff then. I don't think that that's appropriate, Mr. Chairman. I don't think that that's reasonable for us. I don't think that that's in the public interest. I think we need to take action. It needs to be appropriate. It needs to be now. We can't stick our head in the sand, but we need to start moving this ship forward again. And so I'll be supporting these motions. I think it's tremendously important that we tell the people we have given a great deal of thought to this. And it's been on our minds and weighed on our hearts for a long time. May not be popular with some, but my job here, Mr. Chairman, is not to be popular. That was my job when I was a politician. That's not my job now. My job is to be objective, to figure out what's in the public interest, to figure out how to best balance so many different competing interests, and to carry out the law. I think that's what we're doing, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be voting in the affirmative on the proposition of motions that are combined into a package. And I think it's important that package go together forward as one, because if you start picking one or two out of it, it unravels as a plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This time I wish to recognize Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone who's in attendance today. I also would like to join my colleagues in thanking all of the people who attended our hearings on Thursday and Friday and provided testimony and commentary and insights into how we should move forward to address this problem. I'd also like to thank the utility companies for responding to my request for data on a very short notice. A lot of this is deja vu for me. Some of you may know that back in 2009, in a similar situation to this one, we did not have a pandemic at the time, but we had many hundreds of thousands of households across the state of Maryland with inordinately large bills as a result of an extremely cold polar vortex type weather pattern. The resultant proceeding that the commission initiated at the behest of the General Assembly and a number of many hundreds of complaints to the commission directed me to meet all of the parties in the type of negotiations that the Office of People's Counsel and our technical staff and the utility companies attempted to engage in a few weeks ago to try and figure out a way to resolve it and to come up with a solution that would assist customers in moving forward without having mass terminations. At the time, and this is a long time ago, so I'm going a little bit on memory, but Baltimore Gas and Electric Company announced that they had 80,000 customers who had expired turnoff notices, significant arrears, and could have been disconnected had the commission not acted. Potomac Electric Power Company made a similar announcement. They had 40,000 customers in the same situation. So after the conclusion of our meetings, we were basically in the same place the meetings were in this time. No agreement, no resolution. But there were some things that we knew that were in place then that were in place today. We knew that there was a lot of assistance available for customers. We knew that there were consumers that had never applied for assistance before and who were looking forward to obtaining that assistance if they knew how to do so. And we knew that the arrears were growing. The commission's long known that customers with large arrears will have extremely difficult time paying them off. As it continues to grow, the customers are simply not capable of paying off a multiple $100, even several $1,000 arrearage during the course of one or two billing cycles. And it typically resulted in the type of result we don't want, which is a service denial. Back in 2009, Baltimore Gas and Electric Company, again, using the numbers that I can remember, sent out over 300,000 invitations to consumers to take the assistance plans that the commission decided to offer at that time. 78,000 customers actually accepted those plans. After 14 months of back and forth and the types of payments that the customers could make during that process, the commission staff in its report analyzing the data from that, it's available in the commission's dockets online, demonstrated and filed the comments to show that at the conclusion of that 14-month period, when the data was analyzed, only 87 customers had lost their power. So that means that of the 78,000 plus customers that took payment plans, 87 of them were only ones that lost power. And of those, many of them were able to get their services back on. It was a very difficult time to go through. Customers had a lot of large bills. There were a lot of challenges, but the important thing to keep in mind is that it became important to focus on what was best for the public interest, not just helping utilities collect money, but making sure that customers didn't come into a scenario where, when the moratorium finally ended, the assistance money that we had by statute or by design simply wasn't enough to help, and customers were unable to do anything about it. So I'll be supporting the motions today because, a lot like what happened back in 2009, the lessons learned that I had from that time is that we had to address it. We have to address this challenge right now. Can't continue to allow the arrearages to continue to grow, not just for those customers who cannot pay, but for those customers who can. For those customers who cannot pay, we heard on Friday from our Department of Human Resources, Office of Home Energy Programs, that there's millions of dollars available to help customers who are, if they are unable to pay because they've lost their income within the last or more than 30 days ago, they're eligible for assistance. And that assistance for some new first-time customers may very well pay off the vast majority of the arrearage they bring to the office for assistance at the time. I take the utility companies, as my colleagues did, at their word, that they will work with customers. And I don't do so just because they said so. I do so because, having worked at a utility company and having worked with companies for many years, sitting across the table from them, and even in my own law firm, sitting on the other side of the table as I was suing them, but we'll talk about that now. But the point is, even in those days, I know that they had the capability and ability to work with customers to find a stable middle ground where they can maintain their service and continue to move forward, working on whatever challenges they have in their own homes. I look forward to working with my colleagues to make additional announcements and to add the rest of the corners that need to be added to these original motions to make sure that the transition that we're embarking on now is a smooth one, or as smooth as it can be going forward for customers. I encourage our energy advocates, many of whom I've worked with for many years, to continue to be supportive of customers as they have been all along, and to assist them in managing their bills through this process. Advocates have always done that, and over the years I've again sat on the other side of the table with them and on the same side, and I can tell you that they're capable of doing it, and I would expect that they would continue to do so even in these times. Finally, I point out that the actions that we're taking here today don't impact all of the industries that were covered under the governor's utility emergency order. So I call on those companies that offer utility type services that are not regulated by this commission, to the extent they need to offer similar types of transition plans, that they would do so. Companies like Verizon and their Fios high-speed internet at home, Xfinity with similar solutions, and companies like, entities like the Baltimore City Department of Public Works and the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission, all of whom offer water and sewage services that are not regulated by the commission, but were under the emergency order that is expiring tomorrow. I encourage you to look at the actions that the commission is taking today and to develop similar solutions or solutions that will work for your particular industry, and announce them so that consumers are aware of what steps they need to take in order to maintain their service. And so I'll close with a comment that I used to make to my staff members in the Consumer Affairs Division here at the Commission, formerly OER. Utilities and consumers oftentimes don't get along. And at times when money is involved, there could even be a lot of dispute. But there's no divorce there. The utility company and the consumer at the end of the back and forth still have to work with each other and have a cordial business relationship. So I'd encourage utility companies to remember that. I encourage the advocates to work towards making sure that it happens. And with my colleagues, I look forward to monitoring this process very closely to make sure that this transition remains in the public interest. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I now recognize Commissioner Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to, I'm not going to repeat the comments of my colleagues. I very much agree with the chairman and with his statements, and through many of those difficult times Commissioner Linton talked about, I also was working through those times with him, and so I concur with his statements as well. I'd like to make a few additional statements. First off, I'd like to say that for the smaller companies, Easton and Hagerstown, for those companies, if you have concerns with the interim steps that we've adopted here and they cause you specific problems, please contact us and we'll address those issues separately. So for you smaller companies, if something does arise, please let us know. I've heard today that we've heard calls for compassion and empathy. And in today's environment, when I do venture out of my house, I see a lot of compassion and empathy on the street with people. People are trying to help each other out. And so today I choose, like Commissioner Linton, to be optimistic that the stakeholders we've heard from over the past couple of days will comport with their commitments to this commission and will exercise compassion and empathy. And therefore, as a first step, I support these motions. And I will end with this. I urge people to contact the energy assistance agencies. There is a lot of money out there that's available. Please take advantage of it now before the agencies become flooded with calls. Now is the time to call. And I really urge anybody who might need assistance to call their utility company and call those energy assistance agencies, because the money is there and they are waiting for your calls. So please call them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this time, I will call a vote on the motions package that I described. For the convenience of the viewers, we will be providing the motions on this slide deck. Commissioner Richard has an outstanding request to separate these motions. I am denying that request because this is a comprehensive and interrelated package to provide a framework and a solution going forward. Separating these motions individually a la carte is not possible in this instance. Therefore, I move that we establish a moratorium prohibiting any public service company as defined in the Maryland Code, Public Utilities Article, Section 1-101, from billing or collecting any fee or charge imposed for a late or otherwise untimely payment, or from terminating service except where commission regulations permit termination without notice, for any account that serves in whole or in part a dwelling unit or residence until October the 1st, 2020. To the extent any commission regulations, orders, or tariffs conflict with this order, they are suspended until further direction of the commission. As continued, I think we have to go back one. There we go. I move that we order that any notice of termination of service by a public service company of any account that serves a dwelling unit or residence, and where the notice was or may be sent prior to October 1st, 2020, shall be invalid and may not be used to satisfy the commission's termination notice requirements. To the extent any commission regulations, orders, or tariffs conflict with this order, they are suspended until further direction of the commission. The next motion relates to extending the notice period for an additional 45 days. And I move that for any service termination by a public service company on any account that serves a dwelling unit or residence, where such termination requires notice under current commission regulations, the notice must be sent to customers at least 45 days prior to the date on or after which service termination may occur. To the extent any commission regulations, orders, or tariffs conflict with this order, they are suspended until further direction of the commission. The third notice relates to minimum repayment terms. And I move that any structured payment plan offered by a public service company under commission jurisdiction to any Maryland residential customer in arrears or otherwise unable to pay must contain a minimum 12-month repayment term. In the case of a customer certified by the Maryland Office of Home Energy Programs as low income, the company must offer a minimum repayment term of 24 months. To the extent any commission regulations, orders, or tariffs conflict with this order, they are suspended until further direction of the commission. The fourth motion relates to waiving down payment and deposits. I move that we prohibit any public service company under commission jurisdiction from collecting or requiring down payments or deposits as a condition of beginning a payment plan for any residential customer, including both current and new customers. To the extent any commission regulations, orders, or tariffs conflict with this order, They are suspended until further direction of the commission. And finally, the fifth motion relates to the negotiation of a payment plan. And I move that we prohibit a public service company from refusing to negotiate or denying a payment plan to a residential customer receiving service because the customer failed to meet the terms and conditions of an alternative payment plan during the past 18 months. To the extent any commission regulations, orders, or tariffs conflict with this order, they are suspended until further direction of the commission. That is the comprehensive motions package. The vote begins with Commissioner Richard.
I'm going to abstain at this time. As I stated earlier, I really don't feel like I've had an opportunity to consider a package that I can support, and a lot of this package was, cooked over the weekend, and I didn't have a chance really to be as involved as I would have liked to have been because of my position. So again, I will abstain.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton. Appears that Commissioner Linton is having a connectivity issue. We'll wait a moment. Commissioner Linton, we lost you. What is your vote?
It's aye. I put a thumb up. I don't know if you saw it. Aye.
You froze.
I froze? Okay.
And Commissioner Herman.
Aye.
I too vote aye. By a unanimous vote of 4-0, the motions are approved. Are there any additional requests of the chair by the commissioners? Seeing none, thank you. Good luck. We will get through this. This hearing is adjourned.